Well, our SABC anchor Nompumelelo Siziba earlier spoke to Trade and Industry Minister Rob Davies to get some insights around the summit.
It's the culmination of a lot of preparatory work that's been done in NEDLAC, and it's had quite a high input of technical people from business, government and labour. And also there are commitments for follow-up and monitoring. So I think that this time round it's stronger on those kind of things, stronger on commitments in terms of concrete outcomes and also in terms of monitoring, evaluation and enforcement measures. So I think that's the hope that we have, so that this time round there'll be a higher level of delivery on what's agreed.
So from the perspective of the DTI, what's your level of engagement? Are there some incentives in place for certain sectors?
Well, there's a number of discussions in place about some of the funding mechanisms to increase the funding mechanisms for productive activities in the economy. They're not all in the space of the DTI, not all in the space of manufacturing. In agriculture, there's a number of projects, for example, because I think that it's widely recognized that there's a number of quick wins in the agriculture and agro-processing value chain. But there's some important commitments around one of the very, very important policy tools that we've been driving, which has become weakened and impaired as a result of some of the corruption, state capture issues, and that's the tool of localization. So first of all, there's a series of commitments which we're making as government to shorten the processes, the time it takes to agree on a designation and then to implement a designation for local production and local procurement. And then on top of that, we are reiterating things we've been saying before, that if there's non-implementation by organs of state, because once a practice note is issued by National Treasury, it's not an option any longer whether you decide to go for the local production option or not. It's now an instruction. And if you don't do it, you are non-compliant with applicable legislation, and it will from now on be an audit finding against you, which you'll have to go and explain, because there's now tighter consequence management for non-implementation of declared objectives and regulations in government. And then on top of that, I think we're getting the social partners to monitor, evaluate. So hopefully we'll not only be agreeing on a faster and more effective process, but also one in which the consequence management will be tighter and tougher. And then there's a series of commitments which are coming from business about opening up identified parts of the business value chain for local production, strengthening the Proudly South Africa organisation. I think all of these speak to a very, very important policy tool of ensuring that what we consume in our country contributes to jobs in our country and not to jobs in somebody else's country by bringing in imports in areas in particular where we are perfectly capable of producing the goods ourselves. So that, I think, is one very, very welcome area in this undertaking. It's also part of boosting demand and creating stronger levels of employment. Then, as I say, there's a series of project level and sector level commitments in different sectors, and I think that all of those there are estimations of the job creation, which I think will have to come out in the announcements that are made in due course. But if we put all of this together and we work in the way that I think we are now being asked to work by our president, that we should be able to see a substantial number of jobs that would not otherwise exist in our country being created.
And lastly, Minister, is this but a microcosm of what needs to happen, but in a wider context of the fact that we need to have economic growth? Because if you make all these efforts in terms of identifying certain sectors that need assistance, but we don't get that overall growth, then that's going to be quite difficult. And with this investment summit also coming up, presumably you're hoping that all of these things are going to work together for the good.
No, indeed. And of course, a lot of these measures will stimulate economic growth, growth of productive activity in our country, and things like, removing the bureaucracy around some of the visas should give an immediate boost to tourism. And a lot of those decisions have already been taken. And as you say, this job summit will feed into the investment summit. A lot of work's been done on the investment summit. I mean, I know myself that there will be some very exciting investment announcements that will be made at the investment summit, and that should assist, I think, in turning around one of the very, very important levers, which is investment creates productive capacity. We've been performing suboptimally in terms of investment, and if we raise the level of investment, if we achieve the President's target of $100 billion of additional investment over 5 years, that will make a substantial difference to growth in our country.